Frank Abagnale Jr. is just a teenager. Things take a wild turn when his mom divorces his dad when he's only 14. Frank decides to stick with his dad after the split. Now here's where it gets interesting. By the time he's 15, Frank's got this natural charm, good height, and overall look that make people think he's way older than he actually is. His dad starts bringing him along to these fancy gatherings, and Frank starts observing everything. He watches powerful businessmen and politicians, seeing how charm and style can get you places. Within 6 months, Frank's already dabbling in small cons, womanizing, and even some thievery. Around the same time, his dad hits a rough patch financially and ends up working a low-paid postal job. This really messes with Frank's head. He's frustrated, so he quits high school and decides to leave home at just 16. He heads to New York, and get this, he never speaks to his parents again. Frank soon realizes that he won't be able to survive in the city working the jobs he's actually qualified for. So he alters his driver's license to make himself 10 years older. Why? Because he needed to open a bank account to cash his fake checks. Frank starts cashing these checks all over town, but he doesn't stop there. He opens multiple accounts under different names, making it nearly impossible for the banks to catch him. Now, Frank's got some money, but he's always looking for the next big thing. He notices pilots always get treated like VIPs. Free flights, fancy hotels, the works. So Frank decides to become a pilot. But not by going to flight school, no, that would be too easy. He simply calls the airline, says he lost his uniform, and gets a new one sent to him. With his uniform and a forged ID badge, Frank starts deadheading. That's flying for free in the jump seat all over the world. He even stays in luxurious hotels, all on the airline's tab. Can you believe that? By the age of 19, he had already flown to 26 countries, all for free. But wait, it gets crazier. Frank doesn't just stop being a fake pilot. He decides to take on a new identity, and this time, he's going to be a doctor. So he moves to a residential community in Atlanta, Georgia. There, he becomes friends with an actual doctor and somehow convinces him that he's a burned-out pediatrician. The doctor buys his story and invites Frank to come observe at the hospital. With his charm, Frank wins over the hospital staff in no time and becomes a regular face there. Frank uses this time to hit the hospital's library and study up on medicine. Eventually, they even offer him a temporary position supervising medical interns on the night shift. How does he even pull this off? He often uses humor to deflect questions he didn't know the answers to. He even dodges performing any serious medical procedures by delegating tasks to interns. Talk about gutsy. So later on, Frank moves to California and falls head over heels for this woman. Things get really serious and they even start talking about marriage. Frank decides it's time to come clean, so he confesses everything to her. But here's the twist. She goes straight to the FBI and tells them where he is. But Frank, being the slippery guy he is, somehow manages to avoid getting caught. He moves to Louisiana and decides to become a lawyer. This time, he reconnects with a stewardess from his days as a fake Pan Am co-pilot. He convinces her that, on top of being a pilot, he's also got a degree from Harvard. She totally buys it and introduces him to a lawyer in the state district attorney's office. So this lawyer tells Frank that all he needs to get a job with the DA are his Harvard Law School transcript and to pass the Louisiana bar exam. Frank, being the crafty guy he is, forages a Harvard Law School transcript, and he actually passes the bar exam on his third try after studying for only a few weeks. Then, he lands a job as a legal assistant at the state attorney general's office. But after some time, when things get a little complex for him, he leaves this job too. After this, during a trip to Utah, Frank decides to become a professor of sociology at Brigham Young University, again, using forged credentials. At this point, he's wanted on 4 continents. But does that slow him down? Nope. Before attempting to retire and live a normal life, Frank decides to pull off one last big Pan Am con. He goes to a college and interviews women to recruit 8 new Pan Am flight attendants. With his beautiful new crew, he takes a promotional tour around Europe, all funded by Pan Am errands. He even manages to pocket $300,000 of Pan Am's money, along with his fraudulent company expense checks. At the age of 20, he changes his name and pretends to be a successful screenwriter and settles in France. But he is not able to live this normal life for too long. The FBI was hot on his trail and made it a mission to catch Frank. The cat and mouse game between Frank and the FBI was intense. Eventually, Frank's luck runs out. At the age of 21, he gets caught in France, where he had been hiding out. It's said that he was reported to the French police by another woman he used to date. He spends 6 months in a harsh French prison before being extradited to the United States. During this time, Frank manages to escape 2 times. Once, he escapes a plane while on the runway through the kitchen galley, and the other time from the jail itself with the help of a still loyal girlfriend. But his ordeal isn't over yet. He is sentenced to 12 years in prison for check fraud, but even in prison, Frank's story doesn't end there. While serving his sentence, Frank is offered a deal by the FBI. They recognize his talents and ask him to help them catch other check forgers. Frank accepts and eventually becomes a consultant for the FBI, using his skills to help prevent the very crimes he once committed. So in this case, you can actually say that this guy faked it till he made it. Today, Frank Abagnale is a respected security consultant and has written several books about his life. His story was even turned into a blockbuster movie, Catch Me If You Can, starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks.